Hey, hello there, and Happy New Year. Hope 2024 is your best year ever. Thank you for tuning in to Talking with Tony. It's season 14, and I'm pleased to be joined today as I am on location in Destin, Florida, with Bryan Lundquist, one of the members of our panel. And Bryan is usually in San Francisco, and he's back in his home neck of the woods, my area also. He's in Atlanta, Georgia today. So, Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time. How does it feel to be back home?
Gloomy and cloudy.
I got some of that going on myself. We're not going to talk about this game as far as you're not required to make a pick. But since you are also not only a West Coast correspondent for us, I'm talking with Tony, but you're from the Atlanta area, we use you as a Falcons correspondent and all thing Atlanta sports correspondent. The Falcons helped themselves out this past Sunday with a key victory against the Colts. I believe they play Chicago up next. They still need some help, but they're still in it. Can the Falcons make that run and get that little bit of help and get into the playoffs, win the division?
I'm trying to remember who the Bucks have left. Do you remember who they have left? Because the Falcons have Bears and Panthers or Saints.
Yeah, I was looking at that earlier today, and I've absolutely forgot about it. Who the Bucks had left? You know, that's why we can cheat here because this is YouTube now. We're on YouTube. We're no longer on Wow, where we were for 13 seasons, and I can like do a couple of can look away here.
Well, I hate to answer a question with a question, but the thing is, the Falcons moved from a few weeks ago where they controlled their own destiny, and now they need the help to get there. So even if they win out, they still need the Bucks to lose, right? And then even if they then that would move the Bucks one back, but they still lose the tiebreaker to Tampa because of a split season, and then I think the Tampa has other tiebreakers to set them ahead. So I don't know. It's a steep. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's a long shot. I think they end up losing out and miss the playoffs, and they missed the opportunity to control their destiny a few weeks ago.
Okay, well, let me ask you this in this form. Is there a loss that really, and the Buccaneers are playing at home against New Orleans. It just came to me actually. Didn't even have to look at the phone, which is a big game for the Saints as well. Was there one particular game that you'd love to have back for Atlanta? I guess it would be the other game would be against Tampa, or is there another one on your radar that that they let get away?
That was the Carolina game. Was it last week, 2 weeks ago? I mean, what they put up 6 points? It was like 9-6. I mean, what are we doing? The offense is totally anemic. I mean, I know it was a bad weather game, but still.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I'm not, a huge Falcon guy, but I can make a little bit of an excuse for him that there was inclement weather for that game.
Why? The running game should be amazing in that, and I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that's why you have to ask, Smith. You have to ask these guys. You got a fellow like John Robinson, and they just haven't utilized him to their advantages, in my opinion. They've utilized him, but they haven't put him in places where I think he could succeed the most.
I think when you get to this part of the season, yeah, some of it's about scheme, but some of it's just about toughness, and it's a long season, and you got some injuries. Falcons obviously had a rotating door at the quarterback position, which is, I've never played football, so I'm not sure what that's like, but it'd be hard as a team to really understand who your leaders are, and have some continuity is an important thing. And so I feel like there's that uncertainty perhaps is somewhat of a distraction, but you're in the part of the season where the boys better become men to get it done and get into the playoffs. And I just think, the Falcons weren't playing with an attitude. And unfortunately, I think they missed out on that tight window where they had to get through some of the tough games that aren't, just kind of catch you by surprise. But, Carolina's a division opponent, but they should beat that team. So, you got to take care of business in those tough moments. That's what great teams do. And the Falcons didn't do it.
It's a great point, but I'm a lifelong fan of the Dallas Cowboys, and we blew a tremendous game again on Christmas Eve against the Miami Dolphins. One that we owned the tiebreaker at the time against the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles' schedule is not difficult coming in, and ours is. And the Cowboys have been this great team at home, and the Eagles have sputtered lately and given us an opportunity, including a victory over Philadelphia and Dallas, but we didn't take advantage of it at Buffalo. And that was kind of like, okay, put that aside. We're still okay, but we're going to have to beat Miami. And they played uphill the entire game. They took the lead very late, but then the Dolphins have a great kicker, it's hard in the final 2 minutes of the game to keep the team from scoring. I mean, it is hard on defenses to come up, especially when these guys can kick 50, 55-yard field goals now and have very little problems with it. I think Jason Sanders, his name is a great kicker, and he made the kick.
Yeah. How do you feel about Daxa? Here we go.
I want to be such a fan of Dax, but how many times are we going to climb the mountain and come up short of getting the reward?
Not enough Campbell's chunky soup, I guess.
Well, yes, Donovan McNabb, he did. Now that I think about it, though, McNabb had a couple of opportunities. One where they came up a little short against the Rams in a Super Bowl that was played in Atlanta. That was the NFC Championship game. They came up short. And then he got them to the game against the Patriots in that Super Bowl, and he played very well. There, he had a critical fumble in that game that was very costly. Look, I'm going to do something, Bryan, that I never do here on Talking with Tony. I'm going to reveal my picks first. And I'm going to start by saying I suffered my first soccer loss. I had a team that was plus a half a goal, up 1-0 when they went to extra time, and they gave up 2 goals, and that hurt. 2 goals. It was 1-0. They had held them scoreless, and then they gave up 2 goals in extra time, and I got beat. So I'm 6-1-2 in soccer. I don't have a soccer pick for you right now, but I will say the English Premier League is playing all week, and if you do like the English Premier League, tune in. USA Network has a nice sample of games for you, and that will run all the way through New Year's. I'll give you my NFL picks since we're going to also talk NFL today. I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens -3 against the Miami Dolphins. And where the panel will take a couple of other games, I'm going to give what I call a bonus game. I see great effort from the New York Giants coming down the stretch with so little to play for. And even though I think the Rams are a far better team and they've got a lot to play for, the 6.5-point spread for the Giants is a little too appealing for me to take. So that's going to be a little bonus game to give the viewers. Baltimore Ravens -3, New York Giants +6.5. I went with 3 of the 4 assigned games that I gave the panel in college football. I'm 49-34 overall in college football. That's the best in the country. You look at Scott Van Pelt, he's 10 under 500. You look at Stanford Steve, he's like 20 games under 500. You look at all those guys on the Daily Wager, there's 3 or 4 of those guys. They're struggling to be 500. I'm 49-34. I'm 15 games over, which is freaking incredible. I'm going to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. I got in on that a little early. Bulldogs -14.5. I'm eager to hear what Bryan has to say about that contest. I'm down on the Michigan Wolverines. I have liked Michigan all year long as an Ohio State Buckeye. That was the team that I was fearing, and I was fearing that they were going to win the national championship. So before the season started, I made 2 wagers. I bet the over 6.5 on Missouri out in Vegas, and that was free money. Missouri won 9 football games this season, 9-10 football games this season. They won so many, I lost track after they got to 7. And I bet Michigan to win the national championship was the other wager that I made before the season. I apologize. I'm out on Harborside out here today, Justin, on the balcony, so if you can hear some helicopters, some aircraft, I do apologize for that. I'm going in the other semifinal with Texas -4 because I want to see Texas play in that national championship game in their backyard. No, it's not Austin, but it'd be Houston, and that's a Texas town anyway. It's a Texas and a Texas A&M town. It's not a Houston Cougar town, and it's not a Rice town. Rice graduates are kind of like Vanderbilt graduates, Bryan. Nobody stays in Nashville. They work up the Eastern Seaboard. They're all lawyers. They're all doctors. They're all Wall Street. So therefore, if Texas can get to Houston, that would be a big-time home advantage for them in that championship game.
Sure, it would. Okay, so are we going through all these games then, or
that is what you get to do. I just wanted to reveal my picks, and I'm going to reveal Kevin's picks and Danny's picks and Stormy's picks. In fact, I'll go ahead and reveal Kevin's picks, so then we only have to get to 2 after we do you. So we'll do 2 before you and then 2 after you. Kevin is 19-21 against the spread on the season. He likes Ole Miss against Penn State +3.5 points. He's got the Georgia Bulldogs -14.5. He goes with his 5-star, the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's opposite of me. I'm on Michigan. He's got Alabama +1.5 as his 5-star, and he goes with Washington. He's opposite of me in that other semifinal too. The semifinal that will be played, by the way, in New Orleans, which is a whole lot closer proximity-wise to Austin, Texas, than it is to Seattle, Washington. Yet Washington is the higher seed. That's just not fair to the Washington Huskies, but Washington is +4 in that game. And then in the 3 NFL games, you're going to see a lot of favorites taken by our panel. The 4 members of the panel have taken all 3 of the NFL games. Baltimore Ravens -3, Tennessee Titans +4.5, Seattle Seahawks -3.5. And when I say they're taking all 3, I mean they're picking all 3. They're not all going to have exactly the same picks. But for Kevin, Baltimore Ravens -3, Tennessee Titans +4.5, Seattle Seahawks -3.5. And just repeating his college picks, Ole Miss +3.5. He likes the Alabama Crimson Tide as his 5-star +1.5. He goes with Georgia -14.5, and he goes with Washington +4. Now we get Bryan to come in and analyze these games. He's our West Coast correspondent, so we'll see if he has love for the Washington Huskies, the West Coast team featured here, or not. I'm curious to see the Rose Bowl's played sort of in his backyard, so I want to see what that's who he likes there as well. But we will begin with the game in Atlanta where Bryan is today. Ole Miss and Penn State, with Penn State favored by 3.5. How do you see it, Bryan?
Well, so you got a battle of 2 teams that are, at least in recent history, the last 20, 30 years, are historically the, let's say, the bridesmaid, but never the bride. I know Penn State, if you go way back, they've got a national title, or at least some, and, a rich history. But in the last many years, it's been Ohio State and Michigan, and Penn State not being able to get over the hump. A lot of hype in October. Maybe they get to October with a lot of hype and they have a whiteout game, and then they can't get over the hump with the big rivals. And then with Ole Miss, some great history of players. Eli Manning couldn't get it done. You got the second time in program history with 10 wins, second in the last few years with Lane Kiffin. I think this is the kind of win that they need as a program to continue to be able to ascend, to compete with Alabama, with Auburn, with LSU in the West. So I'm going to take Ole Miss as the underdogs in that game over Penn State. I think it heavily is predicated on, can they get some big plays with Jackson Dart, that big wide receiver. But I'm going to bet on Lane Kiffin in that one, and I'll take Ole Miss over Penn State in the Peach Bowl.
An interesting point that you brought up about Penn State not getting over the hump, and they've had problems beating Ohio State for sure. Obviously, Turno with his national championship, he beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. It was a close game. Blackledge hit Greg Garrity in the corner of the end zone, and that would have been the season of 1982. And then they won the national championship 14-10 out. And it was when bowl games first started being advertised, sponsored. It was the Sunkus Fiesta Bowl, and it was like the good guys versus the bad guys, because the Penn State were all gentlemen, and it was kind of like a cold Catholics versus convicts thing that Notre Dame had with Miami there for a while. Miami came out, and I think in their fatigues and all, and Miami was the number 1 team in the country, but Vinny Testaverde had a problem that night, remembering what color jerseys he was wearing, and it was an upset win for Penn State.
Can I pause, because I felt like we just got a little peek behind the curtains that Tony's wearing Christmas themed flannel pants.
Merry late Christmas, man. I already told you, like, Happy New Year. So I'm comfortable in my own skin, other than the fact that I'll tell you it's 48, 49 degrees out here, and I'm trying not to shiver. That's why I'm moving around a little bit. But whatever I can do to give you a nice picture to look at in the background. Let's move forward to Georgia and Florida State. Most of the panel is going to be on the Georgia Bulldogs. Florida State does have a couple of key guys that have opted out, but are they on a mission here, Bryan, to prove that they should have belonged in the Final Four?
Yeah, I think it's clear that way. I mean, to be honest, I'm a little tired of the sob story of Florida State kicking and screaming over not getting selected. I would have preferred them get selected over Alabama, but to be they probably would have been on their second string quarterback if they were in the semifinal. But now that they're down to QB3 with Rodemaker declaring for the portal or transferring, so. I mean, I think now that you're down to your third string quarterback, it's going to be tough, but I'll still take an angry, upset Florida State team and the motivations that come there over their snub over the motivations of a Georgia team that I think they both have a reasonable right to be upset about not being selected. But at least Georgia lost to get ousted. They had their, it was out of their control, right? Or they had it in their control, but Florida State didn't. So I'm going to take the angry team in Florida State. And also, I just think they are a complete team outside of the quarterback position. I think they're going to prove it in this game to beat 14.5. I still like Georgia to win, but I like Florida State to 14.5 is just too much. So I'll take the points of Florida State.
Okay, interesting analysis. Nice comparison about what the two teams are dealing with. The first of the two semifinals will be in Pasadena, California. I believe you'll be back out in your home of California when this game takes place. Bryan sometimes lives under a star, folks. There was one time in his backyard, the national championship was being played between Alabama and Clemson. It wasn't even a sold out. He went over there the evening of the game, just got in and saw the national championship. Alabama and Michigan. I am on Michigan, but I am a believer in the Big Ten. I'm not saying the SEC is not the best football conference top to bottom. I'm not saying that. I think the Pac-12 was exceptional this year. I think Michigan and Ohio State may have been the two best football teams in the country. Ohio State was driving to defeat Michigan at Michigan when the quarterback got hit and was intercepted. Kyle McCord. That was their only defeat, and it was by one possession. They were one possession away from winning. I believe Michigan is a lot better than people are seeing it, and they can run the ball and they can be physical, and I think they can limit the possessions that Alabama has. And I'm telling you, if I were a Florida State person, I would be asking myself, why was it a problem for us that we had a trouble beating Louisville, but it wasn't a problem for Alabama, who was favored by a whole lot more against Auburn and needed fourth down and goal from the 31 to defeat Auburn, or we wouldn't even be talking about Alabama. I'm going with Michigan. I know that ESPN want Alabama in the championship game, but I like Michigan. Are you with me?
I do like Michigan. I think the big question is, what's the difference between Georgia's inability to establish a run game against Alabama and then have to play from behind versus Michigan's ability to establish the Blake Corum run game? I do think that Michigan excels in that area. I do think they'll be able to establish the run game early. Can they withstand a late flurry of Jalen Milroe if they're playing from ahead? We'll see. That's the toughness we'll see from this Michigan team. But I think what you see under Harbaugh coached Michigan in the last few years is they're a different identity than they were 5-10 years ago. So I'll take Michigan to get it done. And besides that, it's the Rose Bowl. Michigan's got the history in the Rose Bowl. It just means more to them. Doesn't mean as much to Alabama. I'll take Michigan.
Although their fight song, that Bama fight song, kind of goes back to a Rose Bowl. But you're right. I mean, Michigan, some of my Big Ten friends would tell you they'd rather win the Rose Bowl than win the national championship. And I know that sounds stupid, but they mean it. Unless, of course, it was the Rose Bowl was the national championship, and then they get the best of both worlds. What about the other semifinal? I've already revealed that I really hope Texas gets to play in the national championship. Are you with me or are you against me on this Texas-Washington game with Texas favored by 4?
Okay, I would rather see Texas in the title game, but Penix indoors scares the hell out of me. I just think I've picked against Penix a number of times before, and especially with no weather involved and nothing conceivably to disrupt that Washington passing game. I'll take Washington to get it done. I just think people have been picking against them. So have I. Would love to see Texas. I'll be happy if they win, but I think Washington gets it done.
As far as the Heisman was concerned this year, we had a little bit of element of you had to take the emotional element away from us because I'm thinking about my wife and I right now because we love Marvin Harrison Jr. so much. I mean, we love this kid. And that is who I wanted to win the Heisman desperately. And I knew that when the finalist, even though he made it as a finalist, he wasn't going to win. I think that he's the best player in the country. He'll be selected second in the draft. I'd put in $10,000 if he'd come back, play one more year, but there's nothing left up for him to prove. I would have voted for him because I love him, but if he wasn't in the finals, I probably would have voted for Michael Penix. That's just how I feel. If you had a vote, who would it have gone to?
Oh, I think those need to start going to the actual best player. I feel the same way about the NFL MVP. And so I do think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player. in college football. And I wish that they could have those awards go that direction. That's what it's like supposed to be. But yeah, yeah, I'll stop there. What I actually want to know is what do you think about this back to Texas, like the Arch Manning, the report about him making $3 million a year, and he's Brock Purdy is only making 800K a year. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's hilarious because I hate to bring up Ohio State again, but Quinn Ewers gets 1 million from a local sports memorabilia guy to sign a bunch of pictures and a bunch of footballs, and stays. I think he played 2 snaps and he was beat out by Stroud, who's going to be the rookie of the year in the NFL, and he's the one at Texas that Manning is sitting behind. I think it's what you just said is absolutely nuts. It's absolutely crazy. Bronny James is getting 4 million a year, name, image, and likeness, and scoring 4 points a game for Southern Cal basketball. Yeah, not. Yeah,
Aren't you glad it's legal now? Because remember those days when Talking with Tony was sponsoring Cam Newton under the table, and you were shoving his pockets with cash, and now you don't have to hide it anymore.
Yeah, I am not so much for name, image, and likeness. I am for everybody getting the same. I sound like a Democrat, don't I? I mean, to be a hardcore Republican, I sound like that. I think that it's unfair to offensive linemen, it's unfair to defensive linemen, and I'm not crazy about the transfer portal, but that's a whole nother show. And I hate realignment. I hate that UCLA and Southern Cal are going to be in the Big Ten. I want to give out Danny's picks, and then we'll come back to Brian's pro picks. Danny is 67 and 58 against the spread. He's got Ole Miss plus 3.5. He agrees with our Bryan Lundquist. He's got Georgia as his 5-star minus 14.5. In the 2 semifinals, he agrees with us. He's going with Michigan minus 1.5. And most everyone else I talked to says Alabama. So it's very interesting that 3 of the 4 of us, because Kevin did go with Alabama, but Brian, Danny, and I, we're all on Michigan minus 1.5. And he agrees with Brian with Washington plus 4, and Penix is sensational. Though I want to point out, Texas could win that game and still advance to the national championship, and Washington cover the spread. Obviously, hopefully both of those semifinals will just be fabulous football games. He's got the Baltimore Ravens minus 3, the Houston Texans minus 4.5, and the Pittsburgh Steelers plus 3.5. We'll get to and Danny is 67 and 58, doing very well against the spread, 9 games over 500. Stormy is 47 and 53 against the spread. Here's his picks. He agrees with my friends. He's got Ole Miss plus 3.5. He agrees with Brian. He likes Florida State plus 14.5. His 5-star is Alabama plus 1.5. He's opposite of Brian, and he's on Texas minus 4. In the pros, he's got a little 3-star special with the Baltimore Ravens minus 3. No one's ever said, like, hey, it's not a 5-star, but I feel really good about it. He's got the Tennessee Titans plus 4.5 and the Seattle Seahawks minus 3.5. Now we go back to Brian, who's 42 and 50 on the year, but we still believe in him, and we still believe that there's time to get over 500 before the season is over. In fact, he can pull off 7 wins here on this show. Let's talk a little NFL football. The Baltimore Ravens, Brian, playing the Miami Dolphins. This is kind of I chose the 3 NFL games because of either like teams to get home field advantage through the playoffs, or either division situation, or either get into the playoffs. The Ravens favored by 3 at home against the Dolphins. Tell me how you view it.
Man, Lamar sure looked good, and the Ravens looked good against the 49ers, didn't they? Oh, it's hard to go to San Francisco and show up looking that good against that team. So Lamar looked every bit the MVP. Defense looked really good. Didn't know that Baltimore defense was quite that good. Miami looks good too, but I'll take the Ravens at home, and minus 3 for the home team in the NFL is pretty much a push. So truthfully, like, I think the Ravens will win by 3, and I think this game ends up being a push, but I'll take them, especially with the differentiator with Justin Tucker, best kicker in the game. I don't care, Cameron Dicker, you're not ready there yet. It's still Justin Tucker. So give me the Ravens minus 3.
Any concern here that the Ravens played on Christmas night, which was Monday night, and the Dolphins played New Year's afternoon, so they have an extra day, even though they travel, they still have
Yeah, I mean, Ravens
recover from the physical game that football and prepare.
Yeah, I mean, Ravens did have to travel back from the West Coast. Dolphins have to travel, but it's still in the same time zone. So, I don't know. I think that if it was from Sunday to Thursday, then those are the really tough ones in the NFL in short week. I think they've got figured out Monday to Sunday now.
Okay, I can see that. Obviously, I want the Houston Texans to get into the playoffs, and they've got work to do. And they're a different team when Stroud's not playing. They've missed him. They hope to have him back, and I believe they will. They're home against the Tennessee Titans. They're favored by 4.5. How do you see it, Brian?
I don't know. I don't see the Titans being in their fancy Houston Oilers uniforms to play the Texans as tough as they did a couple weeks ago. So I'll take Texans with a lot more to play for to cover 4.5.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for that up for. He likes the Texans -4.5. And finally, the Seattle Seahawks against the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game that's so important to both. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they hurt themselves so much 2 and 3 weeks ago, but they did bounce back with their best game they're coming off their best game of the season. Can they pull off the upset at Seattle? Seattle favored by 3.5.
Same reason. Seahawks are on the inside looking out. I mean, they're not in yet, but they're much closer to guaranteeing a slot in the playoffs if they pull this one off. And I like a Pete Carroll coach team to get it done. Steelers, I'm still not sure about what their identity is. I mean, I think all the noise around Pickens and not having enough attitude to play might just be a little bit of a distraction and not actually true. I think Steelers play hard, but I like the Seahawks at home with a lot closer to a playoff spot to get it done.
And I appreciate you breaking these games down, and Brian. But before I let you go, I want you to pick hypothetically for me. You have Michigan, who's favored by 1.5, so you have them in the national championship game. And if it's Texas that they're playing, who do you like there, Michigan versus Texas?
I still like Michigan. I like Michigan's running game, and I think their defense is maybe stronger than some give them credit for.
And if it's Michigan versus Washington?
Michigan and Washington is an interesting matchup.
In Houston.
In Houston, so indoors, but yeah, that scares me too. I'm still going to stick with Michigan. They've surprised me some, and I think have continued to prove that they're up to the challenge and are a different program than they had been before. And I like teams that have really strong line play, and I think when Michigan's at their best, they have really strong line play. And I think that would be a difference maker, even though, as I said before, Penix indoors scares the hell out of me, but I'd still take Michigan.
They can really utilize the tight ends. They have exceptional offensive line, even with two of them hurt. They can run the football, and that defensive line is, even though it doesn't have Aiden Hutchinson on it, is so much better than the defensive line that Georgia faced 2 years ago in the Orange Bowl. Brian, I really appreciate you coming in and talking these games over with me and analyzing games. I want to wish you a happy new year. How are you celebrating the new year?
I'm going to come down to the beach and hop on the yacht with you. We're going out, right?
Yeah, it's in the background right here. I just make sure my captain that I use is available because I can't drive it. So but we certainly can. Come on down, and I'll try to get our producer Jay Barton to do the same. We'll have us a big old time.
Yeah, we'll get a few hot toddies in us to get started on this Ole Miss game, and then just let it ride through the rest of the games, right? Come on.
How about some coffee for me? I'll do some decaf coffee. How does that sound?
Sounds lame, Tony. Sounds lame.
Thank you so much, Brian, and Happy New Year. For Jake Barton, who is in Noonan, Georgia, for Bryan Lundquist, who's in Atlanta today, I'm Tony Jones from Destin, Florida today. We'll see you next time right here on Talking with Tony, and Happy New Year.
See ya.